lately I found myself wanting to revisit old games from my childhood. Some of them are the well-known ones like Pokemon, Crash Bandicoot, and the Donkey Kong Country games, but a few of them are the ones I don't hear people talk about as much. In either case, I've decided to make a new series based entirely on my childhood favorite games. And with that, welcome to Right in the Childhood, a look back at my personal favorite childhood games. I'm gonna have to explain the history of this, aren't I? I mean, what's really there to say? The Muppets. Created by puppeteer mastermind Jim Henson in the 1950s, spawned a multimedia franchise, did some hilariously violent coffee commercials.
Care for a cup of Wilkins coffee?
No, I don't like coffee.
They've done TV, they've done movies, they've done music. I don't need to explain who they are. But what you probably didn't know were the handful of video games released in the early 2000s for the Sony PlayStation. Published by Midway, we got 2 games released in the same month, October 2000. There was Muppet Race Mania, which I never played, and the subject of today's inaugural episode, Muppet Monster Adventure. This was one of the first games I played on my PS2 when I first got it in the summer of 2001, as I didn't own any actual PS2 games at the time. I did rent Klonoa 2 and Rayman 2 over the summer, but it wouldn't be until that Christmas when I got the first Jak and Daxter before I owned any PS2 games. And this is another game based on a franchise I don't really follow that closely. I mean, I remember watching a lot of Muppet Babies as a kid, but that's really about it. But the screenshots for the game looked cool, so I decided to check it out. This won't be a level-by-level breakdown of the whole game, just a general overview of the game itself. Released in North America in October 2000, just a year after Muppets from Space came out, Muppet Monster Adventure is a 3D platformer developed by Magenta Software. They also developed, the Treasure Planet games. Those were good, right? And, Stuart Little 3, Big Photo Adventure. Okay, so they're mostly known for kids games, but this is also technically a kids game too. Let's just move on. Muppet Monster Adventure stars Robin the Frog, the nephew of Kermit the Frog that I didn't know existed until this game, actually. Apparently he's been around since the 70s, go figure. The game starts with him expressing excitement over taking a vacation, only to be disappointed to discover that he and some of the other Muppets are only going to a creepy, desolate castle to accompany Dr. Honeydew on the reading of his late uncle's will. Robin gets super freaked out by his surroundings, and when the front door of the castle opens, he gets too spooked and passes out. He awakens in the castle's laboratory with Dr. Honeydew Beaker and Pepe the King Prawn, only to discover the rest of the Muppets were transformed into monsters by the castle's overflowing evil energy, which is also causing the surrounding village to turn evil as well. In order to change his friends back to their regular selves and save the nearby village, Robin must use a device called, and I am not making this up, the Power Glove.
It's so bad.
To extract the evil energy out of enemies. And with that, the game begins. And really, as far as the game's story goes, that's pretty much it until the final cutscene. You do get dialogue bits before and after boss fights, but yeah, the game's pretty light on story. It's a simple plot without any real twists, but it's serviceable enough for this type of game. Before I start talking about the gameplay, I want to talk briefly on the production values of this game. The game's voice acting is really well done. All of the performances were done by actual then-current Muppet actors, and they all do a great job here.
Relax, Robin, it's just a treat.
I will admit it is a smidge freaky seeing 3D Muppets actually moving around, like not on strings or wires or anything like that. But at the same time, it's pretty cool seeing them move and walk and talk without the use of puppeteers. Now, I wouldn't want to see a whole movie like this, but for a video game, it's alright. Also, the music is pretty catchy, even if the songs themselves are, in my opinion, way too short. They don't loop into each other, so you can tell that when a song ends, it's then followed by a second or two of silence before it starts up again. It kind of feels like it was made more for a movie or something than a video game. Anyway, the game opens with a short tutorial level, and it's here you learn the basics of the gameplay. In addition to the standard collectathon platformer business, collecting 4 pieces of amulets within the first 3 levels of the game will allow Robin to transform into the same types of monsters his friends have transformed into, to use their powers for situational puzzle solving or further exploring areas. You're dropped into a level, and you have to find an exit portal, or you could just go back to the hub in the pause menu if you don't feel like doing that. But along the way, you'll collect evil energy, which are scattered around areas and dropped by defeated enemies. They're shaped like stars, and different colors of them are worth different amounts. Wait. Speaking of the levels, one thing that this game has going for it is because there's only 18 of them, they don't repeat themes. Though some of the songs and minigames get reused, the levels themselves all feel unique from each other. The levels themselves are really well designed and capture that campy Halloween vibe really well. Sometimes you'll find Beaker strapped to a rocket, and when you zap him, there's a short cutscene of him flying off and screaming before he crashes into a door or something. It's funny, but those cutscenes are also unskippable. If you die after doing that, you gotta re-zap him and re-watch that cutscene all over again. Like I said before, some of the mini-games tend to get reused a couple of times as well. The foot races and the ones where you're grabbing items under a time limit tend to get reused the most, but I find that they aren't overused, if that makes sense. Though I think even younger gamers might find some of the puzzles to be a little too easy. These block-pushing puzzles can be a bit of a brain teaser, but I was able to figure them out on my first try. The game has 2 major collectibles, the aforementioned Evil Energy and the Muppet Tokens. Evil Energy is used to unlock the standard levels on the hub screen, and the Muppet Tokens are used to unlock the Muppet boss levels. You'll get a pop-up every time you've gathered enough to unlock the next level or boss. I'm jumping ahead a little here, but there are 108 Muppet Tokens in the game, and you need to collect 106 of them to open the final boss level. Luckily, like I said, the game isn't super difficult by any means, so you shouldn't have much of a problem at least collecting the minimum requirement. Even if there are a few bullshit hidden secrets you wouldn't be able to find without a guide of some sort. Some Muppet tokens are just out in the open, but a lot of them can only be collected by completing minigames. Wait. The minigames themselves are a bit on the easy side, aside from the occasional cheap running race minigame where your opponent can jump ungodly high. Thankfully, you can out-sprint them all really easily. Pressing the square button will allow you to zap enemies and objects with the power glove. You can also spin with the circle button, as certain enemies can only be dealt with the spin. And certain enemies can only be zapped. Wait. Pressing and holding R1 will allow you to sprint infinitely, and the triangle button will allow you to use the power of the Muppet monsters. There's also a power-up in the game that allows you to throw chickens for a short amount of time. Evil energy can be found scattered across levels, being held onto by enemies which you'll have to defeat to get, and hidden inside of containers, some of which you can zap with your glove, some of which you can smash open with a spin, some that can only be opened with a spin, some that can only be opened by zapping them. So basically, containers you can open with either attack, or only one kind of attack. Wait a second here. After you've collected all the pieces of Muppet amulets in the first 3 levels, you'll be able to use their powers to further explore levels and solve puzzles. The Kermit power allows you to push and pull large blocks, because that was a thing games back in the PS1 days did. The Miss Piggy power lets you smash down fragile doors and walls. The Fozzie power-up lets you climb special surfaces. The Clifford power lets you dive underwater and swim, even though you're a frog and should be able to do that by default. And the Gonzo power lets you glide. Okay, alright. I tried to go this whole video without making the big obvious comparison, but it's impossible at this point. In fact, it didn't dawn on me personally until years after I played this game as a child, but I guess it was obvious to everyone else, but here it is. The game is a Spyro clone. Just replace gems with evil energy and orbs and the dragon eggs with Muppet tokens, and there you go. Enemies that can only be defeated a certain way, treasure chests that can only be opened a certain way, the act of gliding around levels. Yeah, it's similar to the Spyro games. In fact, Spyro Year of the Dragon came out just 4 days after Muppet Monster Adventure. I mean, at the very least, it's a competent Spyro clone, so hey, at least there's that. Anyway, the game has 6 worlds with 3 standard levels and a boss fight each. Each boss is a monster-fied version of one of the Muppets, and defeating them will change them back to their normal self.
Hey, come here! I just want to show you my windowless van!
The boss fights all follow Nintendo's rule of 3. Dodge their attacks, hit them, do it 3 times and you win. Pretty basic stuff. Except for this one fight against Miss Piggy where you have to follow her down a slide and then you just kind of automatically walk up to her and zap her. Yeah. The boss fights themselves are pretty easy. Hell, they flat out tell you what to do in order to beat them. The only boss I had any real trouble with was the transformed Miss Piggy, because sliding off the edges or ramming into an ice block is an instant death. I find the controls of the game to be something of a mixed bag for me. On the one hand, this is one of the few PS1 era games I've played with full analog controls, meaning you have true 360-degree movement, which was something pretty new at the time. On the other hand, actually controlling Robin can feel kinda stiff at times. He turns just a bit too slow when walking normally, and way too sharp when sprinting. So, don't do that on narrow walkways. The game also came out during the time before developers discovered that you can map camera controls to the right analog stick. It's the classic L2 and R2 buttons for horizontal camera movement, and the game itself has full control over vertical movement. But the thing is, I can't really fault this one game in particular for design choices that were commonplace at the time it was released. But what the game could have had is the ability to recenter the camera behind you with the press of a button. Whenever you die in this game, any door that you open with a switch, or ones you had Beaker crash into, are reset, and you have to open them again. Luckily, it's pretty easy to get back to where you were. And if you do get a game over, you're given an option to start back at the beginning of the level, so again, it's nothing majorly unfair. There are these neat little heart frame container things that can extend your health by 1 if you pick one up. Your default number of hit points is 3, but you can extend your overall health to 5 hit points with them, but you lose those extra heart containers when you lose a life, so it's just a temporary bonus. If you lose all of your hit points, you can still take one more hit with all of your empty heart containers, so that's helpful. The refills do this annoying thing where they fly away from you if you walk too close to them, but they are generally easy enough to grab. The levels themselves start out pretty small, but towards the end of the game they get much larger, and the collectibles can be tougher to find. Even I found myself having trouble finding them in a couple of the levels, but this was very infrequent. One other thing I want to touch on real quick is the game's art gallery. When you defeat enemies for the first time, they drop evil energy, but when you defeat them a second time, they'll drop coins, which are used to unlock gallery items after collecting a certain amount of them. These can range from either sound clips, to fan art, to even bloopers.
Oh!
Any real complaints I would have about this game would really just be nitpicks. I mean, it'd be nice if the collectibles were drawn closer to you rather than you having to walk over them, but this is really more of a personal preference. Yeah, I've been playing a lot of Spyro lately, can you tell? It would have been very handy during the swimming segments, because there have been a few times where I would smash open a container only to completely miss the evil energy and have to swim back over to it. The spin attack's the only way to defend yourself underwater, so in the later levels I found myself getting wrecked by those blowfish. And like I said earlier, the option to have the camera recenter directly behind you would have been handy too. I do have one other little nitpick, but for being a Muppet game, there aren't a whole lot of actual Muppet references here. I mean, sure, Rizzo the Rat shows up in a few levels, and you do have that one minigame with the Swedish Chef, but that's really about it. You'd think they would have tried to draw from nearly 50 years of Muppet history, or included a few more popular characters. I mean, for example, why wasn't Animal anywhere in this game? I mean, he could have fit in there somewhere, right? Ah, well, I guess in order to stay consistent with the campy Halloween feel of the game, they couldn't really do a whole lot. So to sum it all up, Muppet Monster Adventure is a surprisingly well-made Spyro the Dragon clone with good production values for its time and really solid, if a bit rudimentary, gameplay. So if you've already gotten the Platinum Trophy in your copy of Spyro Reignited Trilogy and want to play more like it, give this game a try. You might find a new favorite, even if you're like me and the only Muppet thing you've seen in the last 10 years was the 2011 movie. Hey, if you made it to the end of the video, I want to thank you for watching. A fun fact, I was actually going to include this game in my surprisingly good licensed games video, but I forgot to include it in there, and that video ended up burning me out really bad anyway, so I decided to just make this game its own video. In fact, I'm going to be steering away from multi-game videos entirely just for the sake of getting content out faster. I want to give special thanks to Jeff from ChannelJAL for the Kermit voice. I couldn't have done it without him, he did an amazing job as always. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to share it around with people you think would like it. And also check out my Twitch and my Let's Play channel, and follow me on Twitter. I'll see you guys in the next video. Hopefully it won't take another 3 to 6 months to make that one.
Ah! It's just doing the wavy arm shit. Fucking love the Muppets. Don't you run from me, you little bitch. I know where you live. I'm Kermit the motherfucking Frog. I'm the greatest reporter on Sesame Street. I'll find your ass. I'll end your family line. Miss Piggy crossed me. She looks like pulled fucking pork. Oh, Christ. Yeah, that joke was a little hammy. I hurt myself today.